rolling is, again, the basic steps here on the side. You don't necessarily have to follow them in order each time, but man, it makes things a lot easier. Like sometimes it'll actually mess you up if you don't do it that way. So just saying. So with that in mind, we're going to bounce around a little bit here. We're not going to do all 8 of these. I think it's overkill. But when you're solving, and again, take note, especially in your notes, if there's a place you struggle,
Were we supposed to do anything over the weekend?
We were working over the weekend on the page 1-2 part in the practice over the weekend. I'll go back over that when we go over the practice today. Make sure we're on the same page. So when you're doing these, if there's spots that are tricky for you or you're struggling with, I'd suggest starring things or folding those pages over, because those are the things you're probably going to want to put onto your note cards and things that you'll have available on the quizzes. More about that when we get closer to the quiz, though. Okay, first thing. Distribute just means, hey, are there parentheses anywhere? If there are, we are going to knock that out right away. So we're a little multiplying here at the start. So 6 times n, 6 times 5 is 30. Parentheses are out of there. Okay, so step 1, we're good. You might not have all 4 things every time, excuse me. Like here it says, combine like terms. I don't have like terms that are on the same side of the equals. So we get to skip step 2 this time. Now move your variables to one side. You're like, they're all right here. I don't have to do that either. This is great. Solve. Okay. So my job now is to start working on getting n alone. But this plus 30 is in my way. So what's the opposite going to be? Okay, so we're going to subtract 30. And as we do this, I'm going to chat a little bit about what we're going to be looking at as far as work goes or answers. If some of you are like, I know it's minus 30, can I just go from here to here? Yes, that's fine. And then finally, to get n by itself, we do the opposite of multiplying by 6. Then this gets a little more interesting. So I go to my calculator. And I'm like, all right, so negative 28, because again, this is our negative, the little one in the parentheses there, divided by 6. So, Hardy, what do you want me to do? This is just me. Am I going to tell you it's wrong if you put like negative 4.66 or negative 4.7? No, but I prefer, and you're going to see most of my answers probably are going to be fractions. So just a reminder, if anytime you get a decimal and you want it to be in its fraction form, the simplest fraction form, here's the math button right below alpha. If you do that and enter twice, that is probably the answer you're going to see from me. Would I take either? I would. But I just don't want you to do work and then go, I got the answer wrong because I got this and you got this. Just so we're on the same page. So most of the problems we do will be something more straightforward, like that's going to be. But not every time. Not every time. Which is why we have multiple examples we want to keep following. Parentheses. Get them taken care of. Only up top, though. Not down here. Okay. Now it gets a little more interesting. Because this time we got a fraction sitting there, and we don't like the fraction. We got to do an opposite. So, what's the opposite of Freudian slip. What's the opposite of dividing by negative 4? multiplying. And I would tell people sometimes it's going to be tempting. You're going to be like, I don't want to write all this. I'm telling you, it's going to be in your best interest to have the steps here so you don't run into trouble. Now here, notice, when I multiplied by -4, I didn't distribute it to all the stuff up in the numerator. That -4's only job was to cancel the fraction out, which it did. And then whatever we do to one side, we do to both. Negative times negative is positive. So, again, just kind of getting back into the swing of things. It could take a little bit. But now we're back in a situation like we were here, so it shouldn't be as bad. So, here's the next question. I wanted to get that alone. This is in my way, this positive 15. How do I get it out? Okay. Subtract it. You could even look at that as, is it like adding a negative? It is. I got to start writing a little smaller here. And again, this isn't -9, or it's not -9, excuse me. It's -9 times x. So we're going to do the opposite of multiplying, which is divide. Might not be a terrible idea. If opposites is something you tend to struggle with at times, to literally put over in the solving equations here area that add and subtract your opposites, that multiply and divide are opposites. Shh, shh, shh. Thank you. And so, as long as we keep those basics in mind, it shouldn't be too bad. So, here's what I'm going to do. I do this every once in a while in here. I'm going to do what I call the freeze frame, which means you're not going to see anything that I write. Try out number 3, based especially on what you saw maybe with number 1. Play with this a little. There's one extra step in there. I'm just kind of curious here. I'm going to do mine, and I'm going to float around a little bit and see what people are doing stepwise on this. Because there's a couple of things that can throw you off if you're not careful. And this early in the year, that's a normal thing. I will tell you in advance, though, you will get a whole number answer if it went right. So if you get something fractionally or decimally, it's something went a little off. There's a couple of things here, but if you're rolling, awesome. If not, that's how we're going to figure something. It's season 4, we're only week 2. Good. One other thing I'll mention as I'm walking around a little bit is I had some people ask me if I'd be willing to post like completed notes on Classroom, which I am willing to do. So if you ever are gone or you're just having one of those afternoons where like you're physically here but mentally you're somewhere else and you miss some stuff, I'll show you when we're done with the lesson today where you can find some of the examples if you just want to jot things down to have them to work with there too. Okay, I'm going to let this unfreeze for a minute, just kind of talk about a couple of spots that can get to people if they're not careful. Distribute first, I see parentheses. So here's the spot that tends to get people in trouble. So the 4 and the -5, they're on the same side of the equals. That's where combining like terms comes into play. I'm not doing opposites on these. I don't want a -4, -4. I don't want a +5, +5. If I did it to the other side, I could. And I did see one person did it that way, and that's fine. So if we combine those, we get -1, and now we're just working through with our add and then our divide. Again, if we're not there yet, that's why we do this. So we can make sure we get ourselves up to speed on things and get feeling a little bit better. Nothing bad there. Oh boy. 4. We're not going to skip 4. We're going to deal with 4. There's 2 ways to deal with 4. One is a whole lot easier than the other. So I'm going to put a star on this one because this could come in very handy later. Okay, I see a fraction out here and I see distribute. That looks like a mess to me. Like that's good. Ugh. I don't even want to deal with that. You don't have to. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get rid of the fraction right away. So if you see a situation like this where there's a fraction outside parentheses like this, what we're going to do, oh boy, I'm going to have to squeeze this in. I got this. Whatever the denominator is, whatever the number on the bottom is, we're going to multiply both sides by it. So kind of stick with me here for a minute. This may be one we got to chat through a couple of times. We'll see. So on the left side, we're going to multiply the two numbers together. On the right side, that 16's whole job is just to cancel the 16 in the fraction so we don't have a fraction anymore. Everything else, that minus or that -15, and the rest of the stuff is here for a moment. Now, that did not solve all of the world's problems. We still have fractions. Not the greatest thing, but we're going to fix that. And no, I'm not trying to stretch this out and make it longer. I promise I'm not doing it. So how are we going to deal with this? Yuck. So we actually have to distribute. Yes. So whenever we have fractions in here, in the calculator, we're going to put them in parentheses. So we're going to do 4 divided by 5. Okay? We do not have a set fraction button in here. We just use the divide button. So if I do that, that came out nice. So -12, don't lose my Q. And let's see if we get as lucky on the next one here. -15, 32 divided by 3. Nice. Except it's minus Hardy, not plus. I was doing so good. But just like that, with a couple of steps, we can make the fractions go away and not have to deal with them. And that's a nice thing. Once the fractions are gone, no like terms. These aren't on the same side. My job is to take that -160, make it go away. And then one last reminder here, sort of like we saw in this last one. That's not Q minus 12, it's -12 times Q. And we're getting lots of 8s here, lots of 8s. And we get that set. So the last couple that we're going to do are these last two on the right side. And if you ever want to do the other examples and check answers, like I said, I'll have that posted on Classroom. Now this gets a little more interesting. This is kind of yucky. You're like, ew, how am I going to get rid of all these fractions? I'll show you, just a sec here. We're going to actually distribute first. Not pretty, but we'll get her done. So again, when I'm going to multiply with fractions, we're going to use parentheses. So -1/3 times 2. Oh, I don't like decimals. Math, enter, enter. All right. So negative 2/3 W. Lots of little detail stuff today. Negative 1/3, 1 divided by 3, times negative 9 is positive 3. So kind of similar to the last one. Like, we distributed, we got rid of the parentheses, but I still got all these fractions. What the heck? Okay, here's the last twist. We're going to put one more little help over here in this side. Last one over here. To get rid of fractions, if it's not just one, we are going to multiply the denominators, the numbers in the bottom, together. Now let me explain what I'm getting at here. We're going to make one big step to tell these fractions to hit the road. So here I see a 6 in the denominator, and I see a 3. So I'm going to take those two denominators, and I'm going to multiply them together. So 6 times 3 is 18. And we're going to distribute that 18 all the way through here, even to stuff that's not a fraction. You're like, oh my gosh, so we got to do this to like 4 things. We do, but again, we have a calculator, thankfully. So this isn't going to take us real long. 5 divided by 6, fraction gone, 15W, 18, even the 21. I know it's not a fraction, but these numbers are going to get a little chunky. That's all right. Take my fraction. Again, just using the divide button in the parentheses. Times our 18. And slowly but surely, we get rid of all the fractions. And again, we don't really care if the numbers are big, because what does that really do to us anyway? Not much. Because we have a calculator. But here's one situation we haven't run into yet. We have W's on both sides. It does not matter which side you move them to, but you have to do opposites to move them because they're on opposite sides of the equals. So let's say I decide I want to move this one. Could you just minus 15W to both? You could. You'll end up with the same answer. Seems kind of hard to believe, but it's true. Still need to learn how to write smaller. Haven't done it yet. So all my W's are to one side now. And now everything's like the problems we've been doing. I guess I'm going to have to finish it over here because I'm out of room. So we got 27W equals negative 324. Is this going to go in nice? It is. So we get those distributed out and finished. So the final thing I want to show you on this, I'd thought about skipping number 8, but I think that's going to cause me a problem. Then we'll do a little bit of practice for you. We're going to cut back the assignment some on that, and we'll be good. Right here is my dilemma. If you don't see a number in front of a set of parentheses, we assume that's a 1, or in this case, a negative 1. That 16 has nothing to do with that. I'm not doing 16 minus 1 and then distributing. Distribute first. So we multiply that through. The negative 1 is just changing the signs on both of those. Over here, it's just plain old classic distributive. Okay, multiply the 8 times each of those. Now, is this more like what we had here? It is. The only difference is I do have things on the same side of the equals that I can put together. So that will usually make things a little bit easier if I decide to go that route. But now we're in the exact same situation. So again, pick which side you want to go to. I know a lot of people like their variables on the left. I'm in with you on that. We're almost there. Okay, so as you can see, we may get fractions now and then. Most of our answers are going to be whole numbers. We can kind of see how that's going to work. So, couple things for you here now to kind of get your practice in, and we can kind of review what we were chatting about Friday as well with this. Put that back in a minute if I need to. In the practice packet, okay, this one, Friday, we were looking at pages 1 and 2, just the odds, saying if you were getting stuck or needed more practice, you could do evens. We got answers for both of them on Classroom. But then today what we're going to do is page 3 only, just the front. Okay, we'll be dealing with page 4 tomorrow if you end up getting ahead of yourself. But today, just page 3. And just as a quick reminder, since we are still early going here, if you are looking for the extra practice answers and things so you can check your work, that's here. The video will be up as you are looking into this week. If you ever miss a day or need to go back and look at the calendar, this afternoon, a little bit later, this will be a blue hyperlink. That'll be up there too. And I've got the notes uploaded. I just got to get them onto Classroom. So lots of good things going on, lots of tools. And if you need me for stuff, I am at